You're listening to the RC Executive Lounge podcast, the show where healthcare revenue leaders share real world strategies, hard earned lessons, and bold ideas shaping the future of revenue cycle.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode in season 2 of the RC Executive Launch podcast series. I'm your host, Praveen, and I'm so excited you're all here today. It's my pleasure to introduce Willie Brown, Vice President of Revenue Cycle at Sentara Healthcare. Willie is a seasoned executive leader in revenue cycle management, renowned for his strategic focus on people, process, and performance in the healthcare space. With a career spanning multiple leadership roles, Willie previously served as Director of Patient Financial Services at Prisma Health and as Vice President of Revenue Cycle at a regional medical center. He holds an MBA with a healthcare concentration from Bellevue University and brings strong credentials in physician relations, Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial reimbursement, healthcare management, and corporate compliance. At Sentara, Willie leads the development and execution of policies and operational frameworks that drive revenue integrity, patient access, and financial performance across the system. He is also a recognized thought leader for tackling complex issues such as denial management, team morale, and measurement in revenue cycle operations. We are very excited to have him here today to dive into his insights on how to build resilient revenue cycle teams, the evolving role of analytics and technology, and how to keep leadership people first in a highly regulated, high stakes environment. Willie, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the lounge.
Thank you for being happy to be here.
Fantastic. Let's dive right in. Now, finance and RCM teams are being asked to do more with less. And inherently, RCM teams are short-staffed. And on top of it, there are always aspects like payer delays, staffing gaps, patient financing, so much pressure on RCM teams, right? Different RCM teams use different frameworks for coming up with their strategic priorities. Willie, could you walk us through what is your approach to setting strategic priorities when you look at the next 12 months and when you look at the next 36 months? And the timing for this question is perfect because we are exiting out of 2025, entering into 2026. So your framework would be really helpful for our audience. So please take it away.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say, making sure that we're aligned with our strategic vision as an organization, our goals and initiatives, and then, figuring out what kind of staffing or, automation we need to successfully carry that out. We're always looking to, reduce our administrative load as we, take on new projects or do different things. And so, always strategically looking at that and also finding partners that can help with some of that work when needed so that, if we don't have the in-house resources or it doesn't make sense to hire full-time staff, we try to, connect with our vendor partners to make sure we can support the initiative, without adding a tremendous amount of resources to our bottom line.
And when you look at this alignment with strategic vision and all, there are multiple areas. How did we determine which areas go first, which areas go next, and which areas we have to say no to?
Sure. We always look at the ROI, right? The return on investment when we think about an initiative. We also look at, the amount of change, how difficult is it to make this transition? And so we take those two things in a lot of ways, at least I do, the ROI, the change impact, and how many areas of focus, that are going to be affected by the change. And so we take those two things amongst others, and we bake those into our decision making. And sometimes it matters, our leadership structure at the time. Do we have a leader internally to carry it on that's excited about it, that has the background and the skill set, to execute? And so we bake those, those things together and helpfully prioritize, that initiative. And again, looking at our overall enterprise strategic vision and initiatives helps us prioritize, the things that we're trying to do in the revenue cycle as well.
Makes sense. And there are three areas that we have heard a lot of leaders mention are super important for an RCM environment. And these three areas are also topics that we hear at almost every major RCM event, whether you go to HFMA, MGMA, and whatnot. So those three areas are: one is denial prevention, second is patient financing, and the third is financial assistance, right? And these three areas have somewhat of a significant impact on both cash on hand and days cash on hand, right? So,
Mhm.
where do these three topics fit into your strategic roadmap as you think about the next 1 year as well as the next 3 years ahead?
I'll take the last one first. Patient financing and bad debt write-offs and different things. That probably comes top of mind as an organization. We're very focused on giving back. We're a not-for-profit organization, and so the patient, the customer is always top of mind for us. And so we start there thinking, how do we create system tools, processes, AI, automation, technology to support that patient financial experience. And so from there, we build in processes to make sure that we're taking care of our customers, that we're, our patient facing, goals, initiatives, projects, tools are active. People can use them. And so from there, that drives everything we do. And then we also look at, if we're, going to do that, then we need to make sure that we can secure as much payment from our commercial payers and our government payers as we can. And so we certainly focus on denial prevention, denial management. We have a bunch of people, a big team that works on that, and it really is something that resonates throughout our full revenue cycle. It's something we look at all the time. It's something we talk about all the time, and it's something that really drives most of what we do. So I think they marry well together. The more denials we can prevent, and the more we can collect, from our payers, the better position we are to take care of our patients that may need a little bit of assistance or a lot of assistance depending on the situation.
And especially talking about something like patient financing or financial assistance, there is always this dichotomy of relying on manual financial counselors to have the conversation versus automation. Where do you fall in the spectrum between automation versus manual touch?
We do mostly manual touch, but we certainly leverage automation. And so the way our financial counseling work is it's mostly, post service. And we connect with our patients, inpatient, outpatient, and our EDs, and also in our ambulatory clinics. We do some scoring, for, propensity to pay. We do some scoring on financial, ability to pay. And so we're reaching out to those patients all the time, giving them information. We have all of our financial assistance information on our website. We do some financial assistance by model, which means you don't necessarily have to fill out an application in order to receive financial support. And so that's the way we approach that. And so, we have a robust process for that. And it's really, it is a push-pull type of situation, but we have one of the things we do, and I'm really proud of it, is once a financial counselor is assigned to a individual or family, that person keeps that case until we get them approved for support. And if for some reason they don't qualify for financial assistance, then we have many, many tools and payment plans and different things that we can support, that customer and patient with.
That's very exciting. And when you look at the strategic prioritization process in the last 1 or 2 years, a leader at your level obviously have to make tough choices because your team is going to come up with some phenomenal initiatives, but there will always be too much than a team can handle. When making those tough choices, can you maybe share an example from the last 1 or 2 years where you had to say no to a really good initiative in favor of something even more critical?
Um, I can't really think of an initiative where we've had to say no, because part of what we do, as I talked about earlier, is we have a process where we evaluate, ideas. And so part of what we do as part of those ideas for, in a lot of ways to get to my level is we vetted them to a degree that says there is a financial return, there is an impact to what we want to do, and it'll support our strategic initiatives. And so I can't think of anything where I've had to say no. And so part of, my vision and my leadership style is, to figure out a way to say yes. And so, to your point, we can't do everything we want to do, but I'm blessed to have leaders that bring really good ideas to me. And with those ideas, they bring ways that we can execute and benefit the organization.
So then it sounds like your next level leaders do really good filtering in terms of which one has the highest level of ROI and bring the right initiatives to you, which makes it easy for you to say yes. That's a great insight. Willie,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this insight. With that, let's take a short break. When we come back, We are going to dive into a recent initiative that Willie's team led, what challenges they were solving for, and how did they go about implementing the solution. Stay tuned.
This episode is brought to you by rchq.com. That's ARCEEHQ.com, the agentic AI platform helping healthcare providers improve financial performance by simplifying patient financing and financial assistance. From faster approvals to fewer write-offs, RCHQ makes it easier for patients to pay and for providers to get paid. Learn more at rchq.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Willie, let's dive into a recent initiative that you and your team led. What challenge were you solving for?
We wanted to get to a place as an organization where we were doing charge reconciliation in a more robust, consistent way. And so there are vendors in the market that can help with that. They can grab all of your charges and put them in a dashboard and have you and your team, from a rev integrity standpoint, review those charges and partner with the charging departments and the leaders there, to identify, charge leakage, charge variances, and different things like that. And so, in order to, approach that, we decided to build that tool internally based on our shared knowledge, myself and my leaders, of tools that are in the market, things that we've used before. So we partnered with our IT team and our data analytics team to build our own dashboard for charge reconciliation. And so we've been in development, with that tool for about 6 months, and we finally have it at a point where we're taking it to production. And so that makes it really easier, I should say, for our charge reconciliation and rev integrity analysts to identify trends, and then quickly pivot and partner, with leadership or department leaders, to identify, where things, went wrong, and how do we, repair that issue. And again, we identify new charges that maybe we weren't aware of. We identify where maybe something stopped being charged where it should have been. And we also identify opportunities to really improve our overall charge capture rate.
Sounds very exciting. When you thought about this problem and this challenge, what was your framework in terms of doing it internally versus selecting a partner or a vendor to solve this problem?
Well, we had a lot of conversations around, what does it look like to bring a vendor in? What is the cost associated with that? And so as we had those conversations internally, with my one up and my leaders, we got an idea, from our IT partners and say, hey, we're in development of some AI and automation tools that we're building versus buying. Is there an opportunity for us to save, some cost, process? It takes us a very long time to onboard a vendor going through all of the challenges with, IT infrastructure and security and those things. And so again, as we look forward, we want to always, take an opportunity to save where we can. That protects jobs. That it puts us in a position to really serve our customers, versus not. And so that was the framework around it. Is we bounced the idea around with a few people, that it came up in our what I call a team that I lead, Rev Integrity Steering Committee. And so from that, part of what I asked that steering committee to do is guide us, give us ideas, help us think through things that are challenging, and tough for the organization. And so out of that thought process, that meeting, we came up with the idea that maybe we can build this internally. And so we set out on a path to do so.
Makes sense. And it sounds like it's again another ROI-based decision where there could be cost savings by implementing it internally and maintaining it in the long term. Thank you. Let's talk about the implementation for this project. As you went through the implementation or the 6-month time period you mentioned, were there any pitfalls or surprises or lessons that you learned that you didn't anticipate ahead of time?
Not really anything we didn't anticipate, but certainly some things we needed to consider. And so part of what, I know from experience is when you roll out a charge reconciliation tool or you enhance your charge, reconciliation tools, you're really asking your clinical leaders, in a lot of way, people that take care of patients, to be engaged, to be involved, to really take time away from their day-to-day duties to help you solve this problem. And so part of what we set out to do, with the tool is to really make it very simple, very easy, very, not labor intensive for our clinical leaders. We want to be able to go to them with an already identified issue or concern or idea and really present it to them and say, hey, we just need to run this past you, get your input, or validate that this is what we're seeing and bring solutions versus bringing problems to those clinical leaders. And so that's one of the things we set out to do. And one of the things that we wanted to avoid is really asking, clinical leaders to spend multiple hours a day doing charge reconciliation, while we also put some accountability, on them to help us. We did not want to challenge them, to really step outside of what they do every day to help us solve for this problem. And so the tool kind of meets us, where we need to be as an organization. Very complex, a lot of charges running through our system in order to make it, somewhat simpler and easier and less labor intensive, to identify those opportunities for increased charge capture.
Makes sense. And as you look at this project, what has been or what is expected to be the measurable impact from this tool?
So we look at our lag, charge lag every day for that. We also look at our overall gross revenue. We're going to monitor our net revenue from those gross revenue increases. We also are monitoring denials because sometimes there are charges that we miss, right, that cause a claim denial for additional documentation or a coding error or something like that. We also can look at, our coding rates. If we get all of those charges, up front, for instance, maybe that's an account that the coder doesn't have to touch. It goes through our DMB edits and it's out the door to the payer, right? Maybe it's an account that, yes, the coder still has to touch because of the complexity, but they don't now have to scrub the chart for charges, to make sure we're capturing everything. It's on the claim and is ready to go. All they need to do is put their final touches on it. And so those are some of the things that we're looking for. We hope to increase revenue, gross and net, but we also hope to decrease denials over time and also improve our overall productivity. So we're going to monitor productivity for our coders and our charge reconciliation analysts, because again, when you're doing it manually, they're spending a ton of time in work queues and adding charges and reconciling charges and doing resolution work. Again, if we can get those charges added up front, over time, for very specific items, we're going to improve on our productivity as well, and potentially, over time, maybe even decrease our labor cost a little bit.
Very powerful tool indeed. It hits like multiple metrics, everything from revenue to productivity, cost savings.
That's right.
Amazing. With that, let's take a short break. When we come back, we are going to listen to Willie's perspective on up-and-coming technologies that are impacting the areas in RCM as well as broader healthcare in general. Stay tuned.
The RC Executive Lounge is proudly sponsored by rchq.com. That's ARCEEHQ.com, where agentic AI is transforming how providers manage patient payments and financial aid. Providers using RCHQ are seeing more collections, less manual work, and greater access for patients in need. Visit rchq.com to learn more about the platform and schedule your personalized demo.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for staying with us. Willie, I want to shift gears into technology. Agentic AI is the buzzword in the industry right now. What role do you see as a leader at your level Agentic AI playing in revenue cycle, either this year or looking the next 3 to 5 years ahead?
I think it's going to play a pivotal part in what we're trying to do as as a system, as a healthcare industry. And so, revenue cycle, people that work in revenue cycle, that number is decreasing over time. And so we have to figure out a way to, to supplement that need for resources. And so I think agentic AI overall is going to help us, with some of that. It's also going to give new career opportunities for people that, maybe are looking to do something different that haven't considered revenue cycle. They will. But I think overall, we have to figure out how to cost save, right? While we're pursuing these, payments and resources from payers and from patients, it's becoming more and more cost, prohibitive. And so agentic AI is going to help us, do more of that at a quicker rate, and also, help us learn, some of the things that maybe we don't know today that the data is going to, help us, realize and take advantage of over time.
And any such technology typically has two aspects to it: incremental improvements that take us somewhere versus like 5x, 10x real transformation. Are there areas within RCM or even in broader healthcare where you think AI or agentic AI could be bringing real transformation, like 5x, 10x transformation?
For sure. I think everybody's talking about authorization denials, right? We're doing some work there with automation and AI to, connect with payers, electronically, identify those cases that really do not require an authorization versus those that do, and quickly pivot into those. As payers are hiring, third party vendors to, process authorization denials, it's a very labor intensive task to one, know what needs to be authorized, right? Working through that process to get that procedure or test or stay authorized, and then following up with statuses to making sure, to move pretty quickly. Sure, you can get an off manually, you can do it and do it very well. The question you have to ask yourself is how long is it going to take you and how labor
Yeah.
intensive it is. So that's an area that's really moving us forward. Payers are already using that technology to evaluate, requests for authorization. And so, as a healthcare industry, a delivery industry, we have to get to a place where we're able to combat that a little bit and understand how to navigate through that. So that's one area that we're working on and focusing on as a lot of organizations are. Denial management overall, documentation queries through agentic AI. Again, with AI and the automation we're using for authorization is not just connecting with the payer and making sure that we have an authorization on file, but also grabbing that detail from the EMR that we need to be sending forward and documenting, for peer-to-peers and different things, to move that authorization and those denials or lack thereof, through the process. And so that's one area that I think is a big focus. I think most organizations would say, authorization denial is something that they wish they could, improve. We're not an exception to that. So it's certainly something we're working through with AI and automation.
That's great. Are there other areas outside of AI or agentic AI that you and your team are actively exploring in terms of technologies that you think could be impactful for RCM or healthcare in general?
Sure. Another area, in addition to our charge reconciliation tool that we talked about, we're developing a registration QA tool internally. Again, there are tools in the market. We're using AI, to identify the most common errors that we either make through our registration staff, or that our tools, our EMR, our eligibility tool are not captured for whatever reason. So we're backing into it through denials. We also have some work queues that we identify those typical errors. And so what we want to do is get to a point where we kind of educate those team members real time on, the things that they need to change, correct, manipulate, so that that account, one, doesn't either stop in our system, or two, leaves our system, goes to the parent, and ultimately causes a denial. And it's something that our team members have asked for. It's very complex. And so we ask our registrars, to do a lot as they're managing patients, as they're answering phone calls, as they're trying to collect point of service, payments and collections, and various, other things that we're asking them to do. We're also asking them to create a accurate and complete registration. So it's challenging. And again, the resources, they're not growing on trees, right? And so we have to figure out a way to better supplement and support them. And so we're developing that tool, and we're getting very, very close to building that out with the data we have, and better supporting our leaders and our team on a real time basis.
Willie, great set of insights on up and coming technologies. Thank you so much. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we are going to listen to Willie's insights on leadership challenges in complex RCM environments. Please stay tuned.
Today's episode is sponsored by rchq.com. That's ARCEEHQ.com. If you're looking to reduce friction in patient payments and increase access to financial assistance without overwhelming your revenue cycle team, RCHQ's agentic AI platform might be exactly what you need. Head to rchq.com to learn more.
Welcome back, everyone. We are in the last segment of this podcast episode. We're going to be listening to Willie's insights on leadership challenges in RCM environments. Willie, you talked about an initiative that took 6 months, and you talked about involving a lot of leaders from cross-functional teams and how this project could be impacting them in terms of charge reconciliation, right? What the underlying theme here is really that change is hard, especially in complex RCM environments, right? In such cases, how do you build momentum for change within your team as well as with cross-functional teams when you're leading such an initiative?
Well, as I talked about before, right, the first thing that I try to do is set clear guidelines around the initiative and what the ROI is and why we're doing it. Really establish the why. And so what I've learned is that people when people understand the why, and they have an opportunity to ask questions, you get better buy-in. For those people that may be a little bit more pessimistic about the change, you establish change champions is who I like to call it. There's certainly ways that you can get people to do the things that we need to do to move forward. But as a leader, however, I think it works better when I can encourage and engage, their peers, right, their colleagues, to get on board and help them, come along. And so I try to do a really good job of over communicating the why, the ROI, and why we're doing what we're doing, and then making sure that I'm engaged and I'm supportive. I think the worst thing you can do as a leader is say we're doing this and then leave the room, right, and never check back in. And so if we're doing it together. I'm checking in often. I'm asking questions. I'm making sure that the team feels supported, that this is our initiative or our goal or our project, not yours. And we share in, the difficulty of executing. We also share in the celebration when we succeed. And so I'm always at the table, and it's really, really important to me, regardless of, how many people I have reporting to me or how busy I get, to really check in on those things that I see as important. I think if as a leader, if you don't check in on those things that you consider important, then people that tend to start thinking that they're not really important to you.
That makes sense. And just to drill down a little bit on a very interesting topic that you mentioned during the course of your response, change champions. Maybe can you throw a little bit more light into the topic and how you utilize this concept of change champions in your organization?
Happy to. And so a change champion in my mind is really a term that's used in the market, but I also coined it and made it a little bit more specific for what we do. And so basically, if we come up with an idea, one of the first things I try to do is challenge my leaders or leaders that they lead and say, okay, well, who wants to lead this? And invariably, I find that it's something that a particular person or group of people are stoked about it. They're excited about it. It has a personal connection to them in some way. Maybe it's their career path. Maybe it's something that they been educated on. Maybe it's something that they're just passionate about because they have a family member or themselves in a situation, and they see this as something that will improve that experience. And so, part of what that change champion does is, maybe they're not, at a leadership position yet where they can lead it, but they certainly are at a position, if they're on our team, that they could be a pivotal part of this. And so if they're a leader and they are in a position and have the wherewithal to lead it, the bandwidth, I ask them to lead the project and really pull people along and establish, those relationships. And they have them. And so why not leverage them? And so those change champion really help me communicate the vision and the execution of it. And again, we're celebrating along the way. And so they get an opportunity to grow, learn, and see different things. And so it's an opportunity for them to grow in their career, and have a feather in their cap for something that was super successful. And so again, I don't ever want to take the credit or the blame for something that completely for something that was successful. And so we share it all as a team, and it really has been beneficial to me in my career to have those change champions alongside of me. And sometimes they help you also see blind spots as a executive or as a director or senior leader, things that maybe you aren't thinking about. And also, the last thing I'll say about it is sometimes people will bring concerns to them, right, that they won't bring to you as a leader because they don't want to be seen as negative. And
Mm-hmm.
so that person, that change champion, can take that information and really, boil it down to something that's actionable, and everybody feels heard in a way that maybe they would not be if you're always in the room and you're always the one driving an initiative with those blind spots in mind.
Willie, change champions, that's such a powerful insight for our audience today. Thank you so much for that. I mean, the fact that they have the buy-in right from the get-go means that they are going to, permeate the change throughout the organization and bat in favor of the initiative. It's such a powerful insight. Thanks, Willie. Um, you've been in RCM for a very long time, especially in leadership roles. If you were to give one piece of advice to another RCM leader or a finance leader tackling similar challenges, what would it be?
I would say check your biases and your feelings at the door, right? Be open to feedback from both your leaders and the leaders you lead. And really just be, have an open door. Say you have an open door policy and really have an open door policy is what I would say. And that enables your team and the people you lead, to give you real feedback on, your, your behavior, your execution, and it creates and fosters a level of accountability throughout your leadership team and the people that you lead by opening that door and really asking clarifying questions and sometimes putting yourself out there to say, hey, I don't know this, or I need some help with this idea or this project or this initiative. And people really step in those conversations, in those situations, because they see their leader as part of the team versus someone that sits outside of the team.
Essentially, an open door policy that brings feedback easily to the leader so that the leader could assimilate and act on it. Again, a very powerful insight. Thank you so much, Willie. With that, the last question for the day. Well, is there a recent book, a podcast, a framework, a video, it could even be on like Netflix, Amazon Prime, a series that you might have seen that has significantly influenced your leadership thinking when you look at the last year or so?
Not one thing individually. I'm always looking for, ways that other leaders are leading. And again, I take a lot of my feedback from my team members and the people that I lead. And so I just think over time I've developed, tools and techniques I've learned from other leaders. And so I would say that my leadership, family, people that I lean on for advice. I have a lot of connections, and so I'm not, not opposed to picking up the phone and say, hey, colleague at within the organization or outside, I'm struggling with this, or I have an idea, I want to try it. Have you guys done this at all? Have you thought about it? And if so, what are your thoughts on it? And so I think my connections, with other individuals, other leaders, is probably where I learned, most of the things that I'm talking about here. And some of them are, ideas solving for things that maybe I didn't think about. And I'll just give you one quick example. I do check-ins with all of our, managers and leaders. And I asked all of my leaders to do, 60-day check-ins with new team members. And I do that because I've learned that sometimes new team members, new leaders are not, are not settling in well, don't have all the tools that they need to be successful. And so I don't take that for granted. We check in and make sure that that's a true statement. And when we find that it's not, we solve for that. And that's something that I learned in my career, that sometimes, people don't have what they need. You think they do. And so as a leader, we need to validate that is true. And if it's not, then we need to remedy that as soon as we can.
Thanks, Willie. With that, we are at the end of today's episode. Willie, thank you so much for sharing some wonderful insights today. You've given our listeners a lot to take away from this episode. Thank you so much.
Happy to do it. Thank you for having me.